Hi, this is Caroline from thehappysensitive.com, and I'm here with Diana. And I'll give the floor to her to let her introduce herself. We're going to have a conversation about women empowerment, confidence, sensitivity, all kinds of things. And we're not exactly sure where it's going to go, but we had a really, really good conversation when we first met. We're like, oh, we should do a podcast or something. So here we are. So, yeah, Diana, if you want to tell people who you are and what you do.
Yeah. I'm Diana from thebraveart.ch. I am a confidence coach. So basically, I work with women to help them to affirm themselves and to love themselves as they are. So I really stand for freedom and independence for women and loving who they are and actually having an impact. So having an impact in the world and realizing really the life that they want to live. So what I do is that I work with women every day on every type of confidence issue. So it's mainly related to, I would say, some inner peace and feeling good with oneself, because I believe that this is the first step. And after that, I also follow them in other part of the work, like when we work on getting them to realize some projects or to the job they want. Yeah, this is pretty much what I do, and it's something that I love because for me it's really inspiring to be able to empower women, to help them to become the bold women that they are. So to really uncover that strength and to create the life that they really want. So basically to stop making compromises and build what they want to live. So that's pretty much what I do.
Right. And we were talking last time, and it was really exciting about how we're doing a lot of similar things, but we're coming from a slightly different niche, and there's some overlap. And so for you, it's women struggling with confidence, and for me, it's women struggling with sensitivity who don't know how to, who feel overwhelmed, who feel like maybe they're too sensitive, or people have told them they're too sensitive. Maybe they have some strange psychic gifts and they're not sure what that is. Maybe they feel a lot of emotion from people and they don't really know what that means. So, and it's the same, and it's a similar like story of like how, learning how to work with that, which is really creates an inner peace, creates a confidence, allows people to go out and do their thing and really make different choices. And instead of just reacting to the world and trying to get by, really make decisions from what do I want and creating it. So yeah, similarly, also a lot of personal development work, with also working with people on some projects they're doing, because personal development work, or like your confidence and how you feel about yourself, is so important for creating anything and for realizing anything. And that's where, and I mostly work with women, few men, but that's where, especially as women, we get really stuck too, because we have all this, we have cultural conditioning that tells us to be a certain way. Because we're women, we are more attuned to the feminine kind of stuff, which is more emotional. It's more receiving. It's a different kind of being. And so we've often learned that in order to be successful, we have to be very logical, linear, go-getter, and then...
Men, right?
Sorry?
This is like trying to be like men.
Yes. Yes, and then we burn ourselves out, or we feel unfulfilled, or, right? And we talked about that last time, and you had a really good a really good breakdown of women getting what they want, but without, saying it in a way that is not alienating.
Yeah.
Or, yeah. So can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I think so. The main point and what we really have in common, what is at the core of our work, is to empower women in the sense that, first of all, they are no longer victim, let's say, of their sensitivity or their low self-confidence. But first of all, they really own it, they take responsibility over their life, and they do something to overcome it. So I would say the first big thing, and also a big part of my message, is that it doesn't have to be like this. So it's not that because you're very sensitive, or because you have low self-confidence, or because something hard happened to you in the past, that you have to live life that way. What I would like women to get out of that is that they can change their position from letting things happen to them to making things happen. So to really put themselves in a different mindset, because this is really a mindset shift. When things don't happen for them, don't happen to them, but they go out and get it and ask for it. And this is the point, and I think this, this put together sensitivity and confidence. And of course, a part of that is this type of work, and the part of that is still society. So I do believe that there is a lot that still need to be done, in terms of gender equality, in terms of role models for women. And I think it's really time for women to step up, to take their place, to create new role models for women. So women that are empowered, it doesn't necessarily mean to become a badass, to really
Yes.
not it's not about modeling some men, typically men, or not even man behavior, but what men are expected to be. Because let's talk about it. This is all about stereotype. This is all about education and culture. Because I would be really curious to make a test and try to raise boys and girls with the same education and see what comes out. Because there are so many things that are conditioned by education, and for women this is such a huge topic. So a part that I work on with my clients is also how to be effective without being rejected. So because the point with women, and I think a lot of women experience that, is that, okay, when they are low in self-confidence, when they step back and don't take their place, quite often they're judged, like they are treated maybe with some, I don't want to say arrogance, but some, sense of you don't have what it takes. And if they really own it and go for it, then they find a lot more barriers than women, because this type of behavior raise a different, kind of a bad response. So like you're feminine, you're a woman, you're not supposed to behave like that. So suddenly they move from being incompetent to being a bitch, and in both cases, this is not a win situation, and for sure this is not a win-win situation. So I think this topic it's also very important for men, because men also need to do something about this.
Right, right. And it's really interesting how you mentioned that, from being kind of insecure to being a bitch. Those are like the two. And the people I work, it's that fear of, wait, I'm sensitive and I'm caring now, but does becoming empowered mean that I'm going to be a narcissist? That's what people are worried about. Does it mean I'm going to be, it's all going to be about me? I don't care about anyone anymore. Does being more effective with my sensitivity mean closing myself down? And it's no, it's not. But I think the stereotypes are easier to explain and they're easier to understand. You're either this extreme or that extreme. And the place in the middle is a little bit harder to imagine. And it's also going to be different for everyone, right? Like, it's going to be based on what really works and what is natural for them. And because a natural way for me to speak up might not be a natural way for somebody else to speak up. Like, for example, I had a conversation with someone this week who was really struggling. She was really struggling with speaking up for herself. And we explored some different scenarios of how you could do this. And this was someone who was quite theatrical, who liked theater. And I said, well, you can use that. You can make it into a theater show. You can make it ironic. You can make it funny. You can tell someone that you don't like something by making it into a joke, but really at the same time telling them this is not okay. And so there are lots of ways to do that. We don't have to be like, no, And so you can find a way that feels natural to you and that goes with your personality. And I think that's what makes it into something else than the stereotypes that are out there, because whatever that is, that place that's in the middle is going to be so unique to a particular person. And I think ideally it maybe doesn't even show up as him being empowered. It's more like, somehow this person is living the life they want. And other people are like, how does she do that? Because she doesn't seem to be that demanding, or she doesn't seem to be that pushy, but somehow she's doing what she wants. And I think there can be a quiet kind of, sensitive confidence too, of sometimes it means speaking up, sometimes it means not saying something. And a lot of the work I do with clients too is when we feel judged and we take it to heart and it really hurts us, it's not about the other person. It's because we deep on the inside have the same judgment against ourselves. And when we do the work there, everything shifts, and it's so cool to see, to have a client who, like, every time somebody says something that I don't know, they says that they are not worthy, they just cringe and they hide and they just want to cry. And we do this inner work to let that go, and then I can say to them, you're not worthy, and they're just like, that's not true. But there's no drama, there's no rage, it's just like, that's not true. And it's very calm and centered. So yeah, I think it's coming to that middle place where it's not reacting against and not pushing against, but growing it from the inside, and then seeing how that kind of confidence emerges, which is, I guess, different than the big feminist waves of the past, which are all like, it was necessary, but yeah.
I think there is a fundamental piece of this that is awareness. So when we talk about speaking up and really saying what's okay for us and what's not okay, we're talking about boundaries. And I think the first thing to speak up and really stand up for ourselves, and it's absolutely possible to do it without being an asshole, is really to be clear about where are your boundaries. So there is some inner work that it's always needed, because the clearer, I think, the clearer we are, the more solid we become, because our strength comes from inside, and we become our own point of reference, and we stop looking for outside for permission and also for recognition. So what happens when women just sit down, and there is something that I do with my clients that it's really, okay, now you sit down, let's take a part of your life, personal, professional, whatever, the matter is, and now let's write down, okay, what is for you the desired level. So, like, let's say professionally, what do you desire, what is acceptable, what is tolerable, and what is intolerable. So once they really write down all these steps, it's very clear for them, this is okay, this is not okay, this is how I want to be treated. So first of all, let's get clear about what are your boundaries, and once you own your boundaries, it's very easy to spot when they are being crossed. You can immediately recognize when a boundary is getting crossed, because you feel angry, and that feel inside is telling you, okay, your boundary is being, stepped over. So this is the moment when you need to speak up, and you don't need to say, hey, you don't need to turn aggressive. You can do it with grace, with ease. Because, the point is, and what happens when women become confident is that they stop doing all those efforts to fit in. They stop to people pleasing. They stop really when you stop trying to please everyone, suddenly there's a different energy, and it's like, okay, this is good for me, or this is not good, and this is fine. I mean, the other person, it's like, you shouldn't take it personally, and if you take it personally, that's your problem, not mine. So there is a freedom, there is an easiness that comes, because I totally have the right of setting up my boundaries and speaking up for myself. And if the other person doesn't like it, yeah, well, it's okay, because the other person has the right not to like it.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. And that's okay. It's okay for somebody else not to like you, not to like your choices, not to like something. And yeah, because there's that boundary between the people I work with often don't want to hurt anyone else. And that's really good. But hurt is a very flexible concept. And some people will be hurt because you don't do what they want. That's not moral hurt. That's not the kind of hurt you have to take into account. It's the hurt as in, like, physically hurting someone, or on purpose hurting someone actively just to hurt them. That's the bad stuff. But if you're just living your life your way, and some people don't like that, they can go somewhere else. And I know that a narcissistic person can hear this and use this as a reason just to be really mean. I'm just living my life, So it's a little bit. I think words don't quite capture this kind of stuff really well, but yeah, it's exactly like you say. Like, there's this when you know what you desire and you know what you want, setting those boundaries and knowing where they are is clearer, and then just saying, hey, but this is. And I think a lot of it is just as me, and I'm different. I'm not like everyone, and everyone is not like me, and that's okay. We can be different,
Yeah.
And we don't all have to be equally, like in my client's case, sensitive. Not the whole world doesn't have to be sensitive. In fact,
No.
it's good because if we were all equally sensitive, we would all not do certain things. Certain jobs would not get done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think there is also something else that actually emerged while you were talking, and is how many women get stuck in those relationships that are really somehow manipulative, and somehow from women, even the best friend, that set expectations for them, and they get stuck in that. Like, I know if I say no, like, my friend will be pissed off at me or stuff like that, so I should do that, but I stopped doing that with my life. So I know how it feels like. I mean, I was doing that, and at a certain point I was like, okay. So I spend more time actually trying to help and listen to other people than what I do with myself. And then at a certain point, I realized these relationships are not good for me. And this is also an act of courage. Because I think when you become confident, when you become solid, it's easy to spot like good and bad relationships. And that's something that I always suggest to my clients. Like, let's do an assessment of your relationship. What are the relationship that gives you energy, that makes you feel energized, like after you've seen this person? And what are the relationship that makes you feel drained and really kind of force you to be something else or to do something like if it was work. And another thing that I teach them is how to stop doing what you should do and really start doing what you want to do. So if you don't get anything, positive from spending time with that person, maybe that person is, not the right person for you.
Right. And it doesn't
And
mean
that's,
they're bad. It doesn't mean they're toxic. They can be really great people, but they're just on a different wavelength and you're constantly like trying to do different things. And I think that's one of the hardest things to accept as well, that there may be people who are great people, but if you want different things and if you want different things in the relationship, and with a lot of people I work with, highly sensitive people and especially empaths tend to want really deep, intimate relationships.
yeah.
And guess what? Most of the world doesn't want that. They think it's scary, they think it's too personal. Yeah, and so then you have to adjust and you have to say, okay, so I'm going to have a more superficial relationship or I'm not going to have a relationship. But you can't force it. You can't force someone to open up to you and share all their emotions and be totally transparent if they don't want to be that. Um, yeah, so it's just, and there was something else you mentioned, but it'll come back to me.
Yeah. Sorry, I was just saying you need to look for the people that already want that, not to take a person that doesn't want that and to try to force the person to open. I mean, that's a fight. And for me, everything that makes life more difficult and complicated, I mean, there's no need to do that, seriously.
Yeah.
We have the freedom of being who we are. I have personal friends that are great to go to the cinema and to have a beer and stuff like that. And I have other friends that prefer kind of deep conversation, another type of subject. This is absolutely fine. I have fun with both of them, and I don't try to change anyone. And I would really recommend everybody to do that because life it gets so easier.
Yes, yes, like right, like coming from looking at what's really there, like what is actually there, and how can I work with that, as opposed to what should be there, what
Yeah,
should there be there according to society, or what should be there according to my own ideals. Um, and I think when you said desire, I think a lot of people in my tribe will be like, but it makes me selfish and narcissistic. And I think it depends on the desire. I think the desire that says, I want ice cream now, I don't care if anybody else wants, like that kind of like naggy childhood, like the naggy child, that's not the desire we're talking about. We're talking about these really, really deep kind of things, which I think for a lot of people are also, they are often desires that are about wanting something good, not for themselves and for other people. So it comes from a really soulful place. It's not just saying, I want to have a big fat car and I just want to have like all this and this and this and lots of money and that can be part of what you want. But I think often that kind of like the desire that we're afraid of, that we're going to become selfish and narcissistic, those are not really deep desires. Those are like superficial desires for looking a certain way, but they don't really come from deep inside. They don't come from our intuition and who we are. But I think if we go to that place and desire from that place, it's a very inspiring, positive kind of thing. And you don't have to be afraid that it's going to be like make you into a monster or anything.
No, and especially, the thing when we talk about desire, well, desire is strictly connected with joy. So one thing that I do when I work with my clients is always asking, okay, where does the joy comes from in your life? Because that's something, especially clients that start becoming very negative and having a lot of self-negative talk and anxiety, and they basically fall in a kind of a negative pattern. They totally forget the joy. This is very dangerous. Forgetting the joy and going, for a reasonable length of time in this path can easily lead to depression. So, of course, that's not a place where anyone wants to be. And the problem with low self-confidence is that women that have low self-confidence, they think that somehow they deserve less than others. So they treat themselves, and this is why they put the other people need first, because they think they don't deserve as much as others. So they should sacrifice, they should please people. But, sometimes I ask, okay, who gave you this role? I mean, seriously, who decided that you should try to please everyone around? Why is your responsibility to make everyone happy? And by the way, this is not even possible to make everyone happy, because we're supposed to be responsible adults and to make ourselves happy, not to become, dependent from others. So there is also this thing of starting to access the desire and to give oneself the permission to own that desire and say, this is right, I deserve it. It's fine. It's not going, to hurt, because you were mentioning this fear of hurting other people. And, this is, I think this is something very important in the sense that women are for women, relationships are very important. So women do often stuff because they are scared of damaging the relationship. Now, I know, because, I lived that, and I was doing a lot of things just because of this fear. But okay, what could really damage the relationships? Let's take relationship for what they are. Let's have an honest look at relationship, and let's see, okay, if these people would just, interrupt the relationship or think that we don't have a friendship anymore, just because I'm being myself, just because I'm being, I'm asking for what I want, just because I'm showing that I have emotions, are these real friends? Like, do I want this type of people in my life? If I can't start to be myself.
Exactly. Like, was there a relationship at all?
Exactly.
I think that's often, because there's often this relationship facade where there's pretending that you're great friends, you're pretending that you get along, but then if you look underneath, there's nothing there. So then, yes, if you divert from your role, everything falls apart. But it's because nothing was there in the first place. And I think, but that can be really hard, because there can be so much grief there. There can be so much grief to realize that this wasn't a good relationship for a long time, and also that it's not your job to then make it good. It's not your job to save the relationship or make it work. And I think there's, a lot of us get put into roles in our family, where the family is like a system, and it's like a little company. Everybody has their job to keep the whole company running, and some of us get the job to make everyone else happy, like the little, like the secretary getting everyone coffee, making sure everything runs smoothly. And like you said, it's not possible. Maybe in a small family it's possible to keep everyone happy, but in the bigger world, people want different things from you. So one person is going to say, I want this, and the other person says, I want the opposite. So even if you're trying to do that, it's not going to work. And it puts people in a frazzled, externally oriented state. And then what can happen is you forget what you want, because you're so focused on everybody else that you don't even know what you want. And then you feel like, well, since I don't want anything, it's okay. But you do want something. It's just that you need to start listening and learning how to listen. And it's really amazing when that comes up again, when that connection the connection is there, it's just been ignored. But when that connection is reactivated and you start to hear what you really want, because then, like you say, you start to make decisions from a different place, not from this is what everybody else wants and oh my God, and always feeling on edge and always feeling stressed, because there may at any time be someone who pops out and says, I want something else. And it's like you always have to be ready and on the lookout. And when instead it comes from the inside, you just have this one source to listen to. It simplifies everything. There's this one coherent inner source that says, this is where we want to go. And there's not like 10,000 bosses out there. There's just this one boss on the inside.
And there is something else. So I would say also, let give these people a possibility to be responsible for their life. So the point is, if I take a woman that is a people pleaser and try to please everyone, is always there, what happens? So she gets something. It's actually really they're bargaining something. So she gets something out of it. It is approval, recognition, gratitude, and stuff like that. Especially if she thinks she's not a good person, like a lot of women that think they're not good enough. They think there's something fundamentally wrong in them. So they are looking for this confirmation. They are good people, and they get this confirmation when they do something to please the other people. Now, what does the other person get? The other person, of course, gets what he or she wants, and also he or she doesn't take the responsibility over his happiness or his life, because it's a lot easier to ask someone else, and if something goes wrong, it's a lot easier to stay in the position of the victim and just blame. What takes courage, and that's what I encourage people to do, is to step up and own their life and say, wait, things don't happen to me. I make things happen. So these relationships, unfortunately, in the long run, don't bring anything good, because one person is basically blocked and paralyzed from fear of disapproval and rejection, and the other person has this kind of comforting person that is there to serve them. But they both lose something in this relationship. And we are all adults, It is, if we are adults, let's be adults, let's own our shit, honestly, because there is power in that. I know it's scary, but I know how much power comes from going through what's inside, becoming more aware, and how solid the person can become, how radicate in the ground and in oneself one can be. So, there is a completely different life, and the life that we can completely shape as we want. That's what I want for women, to be autonomous, independent, and free, to no matter what happened, no matter what they learned.
Yes, it's like it feels to me like it's an inner revolution. Like we've gone through these outer feminist waves of like women need to have rights to vote, and women need to have rights in the workplace, and women need to have all these outer rights. But we need to go through this inner revolution too, where we need to say, and it needs to come from a new assumption. So even if you don't feel worthy, or even if you don't feel that you have the right to things, you need to just assume that you do and start from there, and then see what are the steps you can start to take. And even if it doesn't feel like you own it yet, that's okay. But what is the next step you can take to make that come a little bit closer? Because I think that's where women started, who wanted jobs and who wanted other things and wanted voting rights. They maybe also felt that they didn't deserve it, but they also saw that, wait, but why? It's not about deserving. I think that's the thing. It's essentially about equal rights, and that's on the inside too. And it's, I guess, in the most fundamental, beautiful way, that's what religion is about, saying God loves you, God forgives you, God sees everyone equally. Basically saying you are worthy, even if you don't feel that way. And I think that's where you need to start from, and that needs to be the standard. I think what happens instead, especially for us women, is sometimes we take our emotions too seriously. So we say, I feel unworthy, so I must be unworthy. I feel shameful, so I must have done something wrong. And I feel guilty, so I must be bad. I must have done something bad. And maybe you were just taught to feel that way. Maybe there's a lot of, like, you work on a lot with people, like their negative thinking. Maybe you just have a lot of thoughts going through your head that make you feel that way. And just because you feel that way doesn't mean it's true. It just means that this is something that's happening for you. This is something that feels true for you. It's telling you something, but it's not always telling you literally what you think it tells you.
Mm-hmm. There is something that I would like to highlight, and is about these feelings and emotions. So the point is that we create our emotions. So the process is really, we think something, we feel something, we behave in a specific way. So I would also encourage women to take ownership of their emotions, in the sense that they don't need to be overwhelmed by emotion. They don't need to be victim of emotion. First of all, emotion, like thoughts, they come and they go. So we are not our emotions. And another thing is that if we really stop and analyze how this process happens inside us, it starts always with thinking or visualizing something. So basically, let's take like low self-confidence. It works like that. So these women believe something about themselves. So they believe they are not good enough. Okay, they've learned that when they were children. So that's how it works. Somehow they learned that. Okay, so since they believe that, they think that. So let's say that I think I'm not good enough. I mean, how can I feel? Of course, I feel really bad, right? I feel down, I feel unworthy, and stuff like that. So how does it impact my life? I behave in a specific way. So if I believe I'm not worthy, I behave like a person who is not worthy. So I cannot speak up. I cannot say no. I cannot ask for more. I cannot ask for a raise. I cannot say what I want. I cannot protect myself because I cannot set boundaries. Because what I believe in the background is that I'm not good enough to be loved and to belong. This is what being good enough is about. So we learn this as children, and we learn that we are not enough in order to be loved. So imagine this, how scary it can be for a child, because we are talking about a fundamental need for survival here. And if a child is not loving, since his or her life depends completely by the parents, his own life is at risk. So this is where we learn, this is when it happens. This is when we learn to perfect and perform and fit in order to be loved. Now the point is that there is no end to that, because being good enough, as you understand, I mean, enough is not as a precise unit of measure. So how much is enough, and since people that have low self-confidence are always also in the majority of cases perfectionists, so they set this like standard for them is too high and is not realistic. So what happens is that they set the standard like at 15, why normal people set it at 10, but they call the 15 the 10. So they struggle, they do efforts, they do everything to try to fit in. They consume their energy, because later I want to talk also about energy and how limited that is. What is the final result? That if they achieve it, they don't acknowledge it, so they don't gain self-confidence from that. If they don't achieve it, they blame themselves, because that's a confirmation that they are not good enough. So they are actually looking for the confirmation in the reality, in the present. They are looking for the confirmation of their self-belief that originated in the past. So they create for them a life in which they are never good enough.
Right, it's like a self-perpetuating kind of system. I guess in academic thinking, any kind of theory that cannot be disproven is not valid. And these kind of inner theories can never be disproven, because you can always find proof that you're not good enough. And so it's not a valid theory, really. But
our reality, I mean, it's not that there is a reality. We filter reality through our eyes. So we will look for things that confirm that we are not good enough, and we just discard the others.
Right. So, right. And the only thing I would like to add, and this is maybe where we disagree a little or a little bit different, but that the mechanism from belief to, or an idea to a belief, or belief creating feelings and then actions, there's also the reverse. So we can also, especially for kids, it can be a feeling without any kind of belief attached, and the feeling can create belief. So when I work with people, one of the things we do in healing work is test for, like, wait, is the underlying cause a belief or is it emotion? Because sometimes we think, oh, I just have negative thoughts, but there's this huge pool of just feeling shame without any kind of real idea attached to it. It's just this feeling, and then working on the energy of that feeling will clear up a lot of stuff. And other times it's like a belief. It's just a belief that says I'm not good enough, and that's creating all these feelings. So yeah. I just wanted to point that out, because in a lot of discussions, the belief to feeling direction is really emphasized, but the other direction is also there. And especially for a lot of my clients who are empaths, when you are able to feel other people's energy literally, and literally feel their emotions, that mechanism of emotion to thoughts is very strong, because you might be picking up somebody else's grief, for example, and that may create all these thoughts inside of yourself, but it doesn't have anything to do with your own mind. It comes from that grief, and then if you get that out, everything else resolves as well. So that was one thing. And the other thing was, that yeah, perfectionism, I think perfectionism is a great ability, but we can misuse it, or as you know, you can use perfectionism to be even more strict with yourself
Yes.
about how bad you are. You know, but you can also use it to create beautiful things, to make like the perfect watch where everything works really smoothly, or to create a beautiful painting. So it's really about using those abilities, and because perfectionism is related a lot to sensitivity, right? And the way I look at it, it's like, because when you're very sensitive and you can see a lot of detail, you're going to be more detail oriented, and you're going to seem perfectionistic to other people because you see these three things that are out of alignment, and other people don't even see those three things. They're too small for them, and you're like, no, it's total chaos, it's out of alignment, this is not good, you know. And so it's a very valuable quality, because it means you can fine tune things that other people cannot fix or fine tune, because you can see that it's not, something is not okay about it, and you can fix it. But if you do that with everything, or you do that with like negative inner stuff for yourself, it can really just drag you down. You know, it can work against you. So it's more like, yeah, using it in a way that empowers you, and not using it in a way that just drives yourself into the ground.
I would like them to distinguish between perfectionism and what I call a tendency to perfection, because so basically what I think, and this is just exactly what you explained. So the way you can use perfectionism, I think for me, what makes a big difference is the why. So if you're a perfectionist because you want to improve yourself, but you feel good, you feel already good with yourself. So you are for constant growth and constant improvement, like I am. This is fine. This is a completely fine perfectionist, because this is the perfectionist that will bring you to high quality work, to really strive for excellence. And I think that's really great. The other type of perfectionism is the perfectionist that is based on I'm not good enough. So it means that all the struggles, all the work that's been done, all those efforts are done because there is a fundamental belief underlying, that is, I'm not good enough, so I need to do more. So what is the difference? So in the two different cases, you experience very different emotions. So in one sense, the first one is you go towards something that you want. So there is joy in that path. In the second case, is you run away from shame, from fear, from other very hard emotions. So I think this way is the kind of negative, self-destructive way. Because the experience that are there is like, I feel shame because I'm not good enough, therefore I need to work more, and you can work until exhaustion. So I think this is for me, the positive and negative usage of perfectionism. But then, I mean, yeah, I think a very important topic. It's also, as I was mentioning before, energy, because perfection is something consume a lot of energy. Efforts or something consume a lot of energy, and I think you are a specialist in this, related to empath and how much energy can get basically absorbed by other people energy, and what is the impact on their life.
Right. So I'm just looking for the angle here, because it's a huge topic. Um, so I think in terms of, we'll just keep it to kind of self esteem and knowing yourself. So for empaths, and this is a very small percentage of the population, because I know discussions online seem to these articles online seem to just suggest that like everybody's an empath, and no, like true empaths are a very small percentage of the population. But the people who have that can literally feel what other people are feeling in a way that is not always making sense to them. Because the people who go around, I know everything about everyone, I understand everything everyone's feeling, those are not the empaths, okay? Unless they've had a massive amount of training, but then you wouldn't say it like that, because you know that's not true. So there's a difference between thinking you know everything about everyone versus actually feeling other people's feelings, because that's quite a confusing thing to experience. But when that happens, a lot of the clients I work with who are empaths, a lot of the self-confidence work is not even so much about them, as in they have absorbed other people's agendas for them. They've absorbed other people's insecurity and fear, and so they might be held back by the fear of a friend or the fear of their father, that they completely internalized, more than just an idea, but they internalize the energy of it. And so a lot of the work we do is letting all that stuff go first. And then usually what happens is they're not as insecure or as troubled as they thought, where they kind of wonder like, what's wrong with me? And it's like, no, actually underneath, you're okay. And so when we start removing all that stuff from other people, they discover who they are and what they want. It kind of starts to bubble up. Um, at the same time, with that pattern of absorbing everyone's energy, the underlying pattern is very similar to what we were discussing here about feeling like you have to be the one who does everything for people and fixes stuff for them. And the confusing thing there is that even if you don't think that way rationally, subconsciously you may still be functioning in that way anyway. Because if everybody's energy is coming into your space and into your aura and you're like stuffed with it and it's like in your face, it's because a part of you is doing that. A part of you that's really forgotten and deeply hidden is doing that. And so you are in some way creating that. And so the work there is to learn, how did that happen? How, to let that go. So it's almost like you're learning how to do therapy on an older part of yourself, where you've kind of moved on from that, but a part of you is still stuck in that mode, and you're like, oh, but I don't believe that consciously. So, no, that's good, but your energy field is still doing it, so we have to work on that part of it. Yeah.
I think this goes back to awareness and how much awareness is the key to empowerment.
Yeah, and awareness is, yeah, it's like that light that we shine on our energy, but our energy field it's really huge. It's like this huge space, like so much information on it, and we can often have awareness only of parts of it, or there can be whole parts inside of ourselves that we haven't like looked at that can be surprising. And so awareness is, I guess, this constant growing of, wait, maybe this is also I guess empowerment in that way is this growing awareness of, wait, maybe I do have some control over this, not in a controlling way, but maybe I have choices here. And
Yeah.
it's kind of like discovering the choices that you have that you didn't know that you had.
Yeah, I think this is exactly the key because the point is actually, as I was mentioning before, to really take ownership and to really be curious as well. I would say be less judgmental and more curious about what's going on, because the moment in which we stop judging, we can be open. We can be actually open to uncover what's there with a different approach, like being kind with ourselves and say, okay, that's an information. That's interesting. That's the way, I also work with my clients, because my clients, they actually, they spend a lot of energy, a lot of physical and mental energy in this negative self-talk. Like the majority of the day, what is draining their energy is negative self-talk. And what I want to do is for them to get rid of them, so that suddenly, when they become confident, they have all this energy. And things that did matter, they just don't matter anymore, and they are free. So this is really about having doing the inner work first, and then having the freedom of choice. So the freedom of living your life like you are in charge of it, because that's it. You are in charge. So basically, the more, and I believe that the more we become aware, the more we can control what happens in our life, because what we don't control us. It's pretty simple. So we go with automatic pilot and we have automatic responses, and then we can become aware later or never. And that is the point, actually, to say, okay, wait, something is going on. I've already lived this kind of experience, and based on what I learned, this is why it makes sense to do this awareness work, because even from the worst experience, there are always very useful learnings, so that we don't reproduce the same scenario, we don't create pain for ourselves again. And this is where, confidence really eradicates, because it means it's built on what you know about yourself. You get rid of this negative self-belief and you replace them with positive self-belief. You replace these lies with something that is today in the present, is no longer in the past, is not yet in the future with fear or anxiety, but it's really grounded in the present, because that's where things happen.
Right, or even don't even replace it, just remove the crap. That's a lot of what I do, because it's like, we can come up with, sometimes it can be helpful to have a new way to look at it, but also I think the more you just clear away the old crap, the more you just become yourself. And
Yes.
that's already a good thing. That's already like taken care of. Um, so what are some ways that, because the interesting thing is here that we may think that, oh, but I don't do this, I don't have negative self-talk, I don't have low confidence, right? Like it can be, you may be really successful at what you do, and then, because this is something I clients say to me too, that they work on something and then they say afterwards, oh my god, I didn't realize how I was beating myself up before and how hard it made things for me, or I didn't realize how big of a role my perfectionism was playing in my life, in everything. I thought it was just about this thing, or I thought perfectionists were just these people, but I realized it's affecting my life in all kinds of ways. So what are some of the ways that people can, like some of the signs that people can recognize that they may have, it doesn't mean they're like losers, because I think that's the thing we think with low self-confidence. Oh, now you're a loser. No, you can be super successful, but there's something going on the inside that creates that you don't get what you need somehow, and you don't take the action to get what you need. So how can people recognize that?
So, low self-confidence and low self-esteem, because they're often confused, have a very typical set of symptoms, let's say. So, first of all, one thing that I know is that women often think it's about me. So I am like that. And I would say the first thing is that they think there's nothing I can do to change that because that's just who I am and I have to accept it. So first of all, it's not true. It's absolutely possible. It's about low self-confidence. It's not about who you are. So that's the first thing. Another thing, I would like to clarify quickly what is the difference between self-confidence and self-esteem, because
Yeah, I was going to ask you and I forgot. Yeah.
I think this is really something that is very often misunderstood, and people use the term like that, but without really being sure about the difference. So this is the difference, basically. When we are talking about self-confidence, we are at the level of abilities. So having confidence in oneself means to believe that you have the ability of doing what you want to do. And so for self-confidence is in which area of your life, first of all, you would like to be confident, right? And confidence goes together with competence, but they are not necessarily related. And with this, I mean that, of course, if you want to feel confidence, you need to have competence, but there are two extremes. So in one sense, there's the extreme of people that don't have competence and feel confident. And on the opposite side, there is the imposter syndrome, that there are people that have absolutely all the competencies, but they don't feel confident.
Right, and the low competence, high confidence are often the narcissists.
Absolutely.
They don't know what they're doing, but they think they're the best. They're on top of the world. Yeah.
The most dangerous scenario. That what would scare me, absolutely. So, and when we're talking about self-esteem, it's not I'm able to, but it's I am. So we are at the level of the identity. So consider that these both, and if I'm in this moment, I'm working with something called logical levels. So at logical levels, we have abilities, we have beliefs, and we have identity. Identity is where the identity is. So this happens at the level of beliefs. So it means I believe that I am good, or I believe that I'm not good enough. I believe that I can, or I believe that I can't. So these are at two very different levels. So self-esteem, that is basically self-love. So self-esteem is what do you think about yourself, the evaluation, the judgment that you give on yourself. And of course, if you like yourself, you believe you deserve love. So you love yourself, you treat yourself right. So if you have a bad relationship with yourself, it means or an internal conflict, because having low self-esteem is actually living an internal conflict, because the conflict is inside. So we used to say, like, is other people's expectations, what I have to do. But actually, I mean, it's us projecting our own expectation on other people and saying that this is what we are forced to do. So it takes a lot of awareness, of course, to recognize that, but it's absolutely possible. So this is the first distinction. So confidence is at a lot more superficial level, while esteem is very intimate. Is I believe, at level of identity, I believe I am this and that, because these are all the elements to compose the identity. And I think that people that are this and that are good or bad or, good enough or stuff. So it's really our judgment on our identity. So just to distinguish, I work with both, of course, because in the majority of the cases, people come for low self-confidence, and then at the end, it is low self-esteem.
Right,
So
because they feel like they're maybe successful in some parts of their life, but not in other parts. And
yeah,
they want to get the skills to be confident in these or be good in these other parts of their life. But actually, the problem is like an underlying problem that there's this deeper sense of not being good enough or something like that that's kind of feeding everything else. And that maybe, like you were saying, is driving them to be really successful in some area because they're overcompensating, they're overworking, they're constantly
yeah,
trying to prove that they're good. And then in another part of their life, they're underachieving and they're under having what they want because they have less skills there, and they, even if they work really hard, they can't make it happen. But it's also pointing to that deeper wound, which is saying you don't deserve it, you're a bad person, who do you think you are.
yeah. This is the point. Everything happens in the mindset. So what they need to do is a mindset shift. So once they believe they can, then they can, because they will put every single piece in place to make that happen.
Mm-hmm.
Because subconsciously they think they can. But I mean, if they believe they can't, then they will not even try, and they will feel low and stuff like that. So just to come to your first question, so what you asked is how they can recognize if they are experiencing this. Well, these are very typical patterns. So first of all, these people believe they are not good enough. They keep comparing themselves to others. They keep having negative self-talk. So they have negative self-talk about themselves. They are very critical about themselves because actually they have very high expectations. So they hold themselves back. They don't speak up.
They
They
hold themselves back, as in they put off things that are important because they say, "Oh, I'll do it later when everything's more perfect, or I'm better at it, or like, oh, I'm not ready for that yet," and so they
yes,
don't go for the things that they want.
even if rationally they want, and maybe they even try to get ready rationally, then there is something underlying that will literally block them. So they don't make their contribution, they don't share their opinion. They can even tolerate a person having the opposite opinion in front of them and agree with that person.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. So then this, of course, has different impact at different level. And so, for instance, they never think that that their work is good enough. They don't show their work to other people. They do people pleasing, so they are very scared of disappointing people because they are very scared of disapproval. They put other people need first. So these are typical symptoms. And what happens is that this can impact life at very different level. So first thing is health. First thing is low self-confidence and low self-esteem in the long run, since they work on shame. They are
Right, but they don't. But people who are in this experience, and we're talking from our own experience too, right? Because it can seem like we're not like well those people. It's like no, we're talking about our own past as well. But so when you're in that state, you don't recognize it as low self confidence. You just believe somehow, or you just feel like you're not good enough, and you don't know what it is, or you feel like somehow you should just kind of hide and not show certain things because you're going to get judged, or you may feel like that imposter syndrome, like yeah, everybody thinks I'm successful, but I know I'm not. It's just a matter of before they find out, right? So it's like I think it's probably easier for other people to see it, that they can see, oh, but you're good at what you do and you're such a beautiful person. Why do you not go for it? Why do you not claim your life? But if you're in that role, you just feel like you said, like you just feel like that's the reality. There's nothing you can do about it. That's just how things are. That's how you are.
yeah.
And so what we're saying here is like, no, it's not who you are. It's how you've learned to be, and you can change that because the true you is does not have that baggage. This is just a learned behavior that's holding you back. It's not part of who you truly, truly, deeply are.
Yeah, absolutely. There is a lot of pain in that, and this is also what I would say what touched me a lot. So, in the sense that I struggled with low self-confidence, low self-esteem, and imposter syndrome for the majority of my life, and I was there. I thought it was not possible to overcome it. I thought this was just how I was, so I just had to accept it. And in the long run, this led me to a burnout due to the fact that I was overworking because I thought that I was not good enough, and also to depression. And so, what motivated me to start doing this work is that I know how much pain is there. I know where it can lead, and I want really to give hope to other women, to give them a message. It is absolutely possible to overcome it, and actually, it's a good idea to do it because your health and also your happiness are the most important things in your life. So it's really, when I work with my clients, I mean, I know exactly where they're, where they are and what they experience, and I have a lot of tenderness for what they are experiencing, and also they when they realize how much they have treated themselves how badly they have treated themselves without realizing it. Also, there is a lot of tenderness that is released for this woman that is absolutely good, and it's just is acting upon a lie, and that's the way that basically she's writing the story of her life. So I think it's really important to know that we can all write our story, so that it doesn't have to be that way.
Right, and I think kind of this round off this conversation that it's good to place this in a bigger context again, right? Like the same way that the first feminists, like it wasn't their fault that they didn't have the right to vote. That was a result of the historical circumstances, and I think the same way it's not anybody's fault that that you feel the way you do about yourself, or that because I think a lot of this shame and this you're not good enough is also passed down in families. The whole feminist thing and the revolution and rights is pretty new. On the outside we have it, and on the inside we often are still perpetuating these, I'm lesser than, I'm not good enough kinds of stories. And so it's just kind of a logical result of our history, and it's not even a personal thing. It doesn't mean that you're a loser because you think this way about yourself. It's more like, no, we're all part of this big collective story that's happening. And this is kind of where we're at as women, kind of discovering like, oh, on the outside I can make things happen in my life, but on the inside I still feel like I have to take care of everyone, right? Which is why I burned out, because I was working at a university and I could see everybody else's pain, and I was subconsciously taking responsibility for everything. I would take everybody's pain home with me. I'd be obsessing about everybody else's problems, and I knew it wasn't healthy, but I didn't know how to stop. I just didn't know how to stop, because it was so tied up with that subconscious part that it really takes some knowing and some skill to kind of break free from this, right? Like you have a lot of models that are helpful, where it's like, look, these are the differences, this is where this comes from, this is where this fits, so that it helps to create a kind of understanding of what all that murky stuff is on the inside, where it's like it feels like this is just how it is, and we can help map that out and say, no, look, this is where you are, this is where this comes from, this is what we can do about it, and kind of picking it apart so it stops being this big owl barf ball that you're just in. And instead say, look, here's this little bone, we can remove that. That already feels a little bit better. There's like a mouse tail, we can pull it out, you already feel a little bit better. And then in that process, discovering like, oh, I have more power and influence than I thought, right? Like it's not something that you're not going to believe it unless you actually go through it, because then you're like, oh, it's true.
That's it. And actually, I think one thing that can make the difference for women is information. I think it's important to understand, from my side, of course, what is self-confidence, what is self-esteem. It's important to understand where it comes from, what it is, what's the impact on life, and how it is possible to overcome it. First of all, that is possible in the first place to overcome it. I think this information is not yet there. And what I've seen is that there are a lot of information about, I don't know, I would say relating to confidence, there's a lot of information about being a badass and stuff like that. And I don't necessarily like it, I have to say, because for me, it's just taking the problem to the opposite side. So it's just now you puff up, but then if inside you don't feel good, for me, it doesn't make any sense, honestly.
Yeah, it's like now you have to climb Mount Everest to have confidence or something, or to feel good about yourself. It's like, I don't want to do that.
It's not authentic, not who you are.
Yeah.
And this is why I think that it makes sense to actually work on oneself and become aware, because This means that you own who you are, and you can just, your confidence comes from that knowledge, your power comes from that knowledge. And you also develop resilience in that process to really understand, okay, this is what happens to me. It's fine. It's not telling anything about who I am, but it's telling something about my performances, of what I can improve, and I can always improve. But this doesn't affect in any way my worth.
Right. Right. There's this I don't know, the story that travels around the internet, and I don't even know who initially did this, but there's a story of someone who got on the stage and took $100 bill and said to the crowd, "How much is this $100 bill worth?" And everybody says $100. And then he crumples it up and he just stomps on it and stomps on it and jumps on it and just, makes it all
Yeah,
dirty and wrinkled. And then he picks it up and he unfolds and he says, "How much is it worth?" And
yeah,
people are like $100. And he says, that's what it's like for us people. Just
yeah,
because you have experiences and things happen to you doesn't mean you're worth less. Um, and I just thought that was a really beautiful distinction, because with money it's so clear, right? That the value is printed on the bill. Like, it's not going to change just because the bill is dirty. Well, maybe if it's completely torn up, then yeah, okay, this is a practical thing. But it's with ourselves, when we feel emotionally beaten down, it impacts how we think about ourselves and the value we place on ourselves. Like, it's easier to feel valuable when you feel clear and fresh and light and happy, and it's harder to feel valuable when you feel dark and heavy and tired. But that doesn't really change your value. It just changes the perception of your own value. And I think
yeah,
that's what we're really talking about here. And then when you know the difference and I feel like I don't have value, but it doesn't mean I don't have value, that's really empowering, because it means your perspective is different. And even if you feel stuck, you can say, "I feel like I'm in a marsh. I feel like I'm in a swamp, and I feel like this is where I belong, but I know I don't belong there, so I'm going to find a way out."
yes. I think that's exactly the message. Knowing, especially because when we're talking about the value attribution is very personal. So it's not, if you think in general about value, it's something extremely subjective. It depends on what we are used to. It depends on what we like. Like, we value what we like, and we cannot love what we don't value. So that's the base of self-love, basically. So once we understand that, so the extent to which we love someone is how much we value that person. We can use that process, and it's easy to see the process, because if we take our friends, basically, we like the people that we value. So we like specific characteristic, right? Quite often my clients notice that they have the same characteristic. It's not a coincidence. They're just not aware of that. So when they, become aware of that, of owning the characteristic themselves, they start valuing themselves more. And once they value themselves, they love themselves. So this is why I pass through these steps. From the first phase is the discovery of who the person is, so that the person discovers who she is, and the second is the acceptance, and then the phase of valuing oneself and the phase of loving oneself. Because I think these are consequent steps, and I also think that we need to accept who we are if we want to value and love who we are.
Right. And it helps to have a process, and also someone to help mirror that, right? Like, helps, because like the same way that we don't know how we look if we don't have a mirror. And it can be hard to know who we are if we don't have anyone to reflect that back to us in a healthy way, which I think, I think that's the basis of, if you grow up in a healthy, supported way, then constantly the people around you are reflecting back to you who you truly are.
Yeah,
But of course, what happens is that people around you perceive you through their own filter. And so if that filter is really perhaps painful or distorted or something, they will reflect back to you what they see, but that's not necessarily who you are. And even if there's little distortion, there's still going to be some. So I think that, like, finding ways to create a more objective reflection of who you are, I think it's kind of like seeing, like, you're not, it's not the problem is not who you are, it's how we've learned to look at who we are and think of who we are, and then we get afraid and we're like, You know, like I guess the way somebody with anorexia looks in the mirror and thinks they're fat, they're not actually seeing themselves in that moment. They're not actually seeing their body. They're seeing through a filter that's somehow distorted. And we have that kind of anorexia filter when it comes to our own value too, where we may have a lot to offer, and yet we don't see it because we're looking at it through this filter. So to have somebody to help you clean up that filter so you see yourself who you are really is the process. Yeah.
Exactly. This is the process.
Yeah, it's a process. It's not a quick fix. It's not a magic pill. It's not a miracle weekend.
No, I think it doesn't really exist a quick fix. I think everything good, everything that matters, I think comes from work. And I think the first step is to really decide that it is time to have a different life, to really, and this I'm talking in general, whether the person is low self-confidence or hypersensitive or whatever it is, like I would like to encourage people to really take ownership of their life and make sure that they live the best life for their health first, for their happiness second, and for really, realizing everything that they want to do in their life, because this really matters, honestly. And today we have choices.
Yes, and that I think that is it's a grassroots kind of empowerment. I mean, I just think how much more amazing would a lot of things be? How we would have lots of less problems in certain areas of the world if more people come from this inner place, learn how to come from this inner place of knowing their value, being led by their true deepest desires for their own life and for the world. And it just, because I think a lot of our current problems come from not knowing ourselves, abusing ourselves. When we abuse ourselves, we abuse other people, we abuse the planet, and so cleaning all that stuff up inside of ourselves first and saying, okay, because then we get true power, then we know how it works. It's easy to point our finger and say, oh, you just have to do this, you just have to do that. But it's only when we do the work inside of ourselves that we understand that how to do that process that we have to go through, because then we understand what it really takes, and then we are empowered to do that in our own life and also to create it around us. So I think the whole coming from the inside out as opposed to like trying to fix everyone and everything on the outside, the grassroots empowerment is often downplayed in big discussions, like, oh, it's just one person, it doesn't matter. I think ultimately it's the only thing that matters. Like, we are all the people on the planet are decision makers, and the more of us who come from this aligned, empowered place, that has a big impact. I think that's the only real, true, sustainable way that we can really make a long-term difference in anything.
Yeah, honestly, I believe that for women it is absolutely time to become aware of the situation where they are exactly. So the situation in society, I mean, what's expected from society, how this is influencing their life, how other things like low self-confidence or other things can have an impact on their life, and really make a decision to become more aware, to own it, and also to really create a new reality for women, challenge these roles in society, create new roles that empower women. And this is for us, but also for our daughters, for all the next women to come. I think we are the first kind of generation of women that are entrepreneurs, that are owning their destiny, basically, and making their own money. And I think this is the right moment to raise, a hand and say, hey, it is time for this to change. It is time for women not only to have equality, but also to shape their ideals of success, their idea of confidence. And it doesn't necessarily have to be like men.
Yes.
And I think this is really empowering.
Yes. Yes, exactly, and that includes, for the people for who it applies to, it includes sensitivity as a power, as an ability, as something valuable to contribute that not everybody has, not everybody needs in that measure, but it is a particular way of doing things and seeing things that is a contribution. But it can't be a contribution if it's holding you back and it's overwhelming you and it's making you small. So that is true for anything that makes us different. Like, anything that makes us different can be this beautiful contribution, but first we have to learn how to work with it. right? So
Yeah.
it doesn't like make us feel strange or embarrassed or whatever.
Especially because sensitivity is a superpower. I mean, people that are very sensitive have a lot more awareness of what's going on around them. And I mean, you're the specialist in this field, but really there are so many information. They can get so many things at a different level. And I think emotional intelligence is absolutely important if in terms of success. I think there's also the need of reshaping intelligence and recognizing that this sensitivity is actually something.
Yes, yes, and I think a lot of what comes to light when I'm talking to somebody about their sensitivity is that they don't realize how much they're knowing about the world around them, and so and they don't always know that, for example, what they're sensing, they may sense more about the situation than the other person they're sensing something about. So for example, a lot of empaths are mad because they feel like people are lying to them, but what is happening is that they can feel the emotional intention of someone, which is often different from what they're saying in what the words that are coming out of their mouth. But it doesn't mean somebody's lying. It can mean that somebody's not really attuned to how they really feel about this, because very often empaths can feel very deeply, as
Yeah.
in like right down to the bare bones core part of someone, the parts of people that people don't want to go, they don't want to, so even just I think with any kind of ability, it's easy to get confused and to think and to not really understand what that ability is and how it gives us extra information, and then to misinterpret the information you get because you don't really know what the context is. And
Yeah.
so you think, oh, the whole world is lying to me, and you don't realize, like, no, this is your superpower. You can sense the distinction between somebody's true feelings and how they think they feel. And then so just clarifying that for people can make this big difference where they feel like, oh, so it's not that people are doing this on purpose. It's not that, and that's just one example. And another thing can be with people who are just highly sensitive, not empaths, but highly sensitive, who are saying, why doesn't anybody do anything about this thing? And it's like, because they don't see it. You have to speak up. You have to say, look, I can already see this is going to go wrong because I see the little changes that are already happening in the company. This is not going to work. You have to speak up, and not everybody will believe you. And if people don't believe you, maybe you just have to prepare for yourself. But you have to first value what you know. That's where it comes from. Because there's this expectation of, well, if other people don't agree with me, I must be wrong. Or
Okay.
they must be bad. They must be stupid. No, you just have a different intelligence, and you need to be the expert on that and claim your expertise and learn how your expertise works so that you can be a true expert. And then everything changes. And I think we all have that. But when we come from the place of I'm not good enough, all that gets distorted. But when it comes from a place of I am good enough, then it's like, oh, I have this special knowledge, and maybe you can help people, and maybe it can't, but that's okay. Either way, it's okay.
Yeah, that's really about empowerment again, because and that really starts like owning who we are. So owning, okay, that's a part of me, that's my sensitivity, and this is a power. And once I learn how to use it, then I can actually use it in a positive way and create positive things for myself and for others in the world. So that's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is amazing. And I think there are so many in that way, so many buried treasures in our world, like misunderstood abilities and misunderstood qualities but we have to own them from the inside out, like we all have this job of like understanding ourselves and valuing ourselves and seeing what makes us different, that contributes just by being ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we pretty much clarified women empowerment.
From our angle anyway. Yes. Yes, and we could talk a lot more about this, but this is enough for today. So just to recap, where can people read more of your perspective and things you do?
So they can find me at thebraveart.ch.
Yeah,
So I
that's
am in Switzerland, but I work with people from everywhere. And actually, they can download some free worksheets so that they can start. They can get started. I also create some specific exercise, some specific worksheets, and there is also a community where people can support each other in their path to confidence, and also I create specific podcasts to basically inform women about what self-confidence is so that they can start being empowered.
Okay, great. So that's thebravehearted.ch.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And I'm Caroline. I'm at thehappysensitive.com, and lots of blog posts and how to grow your happy sensitive intuition free mini course there. Lots of stuff there as well. It was really lovely to talk with you about this, and I look forward to staying in touch about these and other topics too.
Yes, absolutely. It was lovely. Thanks so much.